Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I never thought I'd be the kind of man who ended up here, staring at my phone in the dead of night, my pulse pounding as I read and reread the message that had just shattered my reality. Bro, I don't know how to tell you this, but you need to see this for yourself. She's at Redwood Lounge. Not alone. My fingers tightened around the phone. Redwood Lounge. I knew that place. It was where we used to go when we were still in sync, still laughing, still us. Before things started slipping, before she started pulling away, I almost ignored the message, almost convinced myself it was a misunderstanding or maybe a cruel joke. But something inside me, something raw and instinctual, refused to let it go. I grabbed my keys, heart hammering against my ribs, and drove through the empty streets, my mind a storm of fragmented memories, her sudden distance, the hushed phone calls, the nights she came home hours later than she promised. I had doubted myself before, blamed myself for being too suspicious. But this was real, and I was about to face it. The moment I stepped into the lounge, I spotted her. Samantha, my wife, the woman I had loved for years, the woman I had built my life around. And she was sitting at the bar, laughing. Not just laughing, leaning in close, her fingers grazing the forearm of a man I didn't recognize. Some guy with a confident smirk, the kind of expression that said I've already won. They weren't even trying to hide it. My feet felt rooted to the ground, my body numb. But my mind burned. She threw her head back at something he said, touching him lightly on the chest. The same casual, affectionate touch she hadn't given me in months. I could have walked up to them, could have demanded an explanation, could have made a scene, but I didn't. Instead, I pulled out my phone, and I took a picture, not out of revenge, not to use against her, just to remember this moment. Because I knew, this was the moment I would never be the same again. I didn't say a word to her that night. I left the lounge before she could see me, before she had the chance to pretend it wasn't what it was. But the next morning, I waited, sat at the dining table, staring at the untouched cup of coffee in front of me, waiting for her to waltz in like nothing had changed. When she finally did, she barely spared me a glance. "Morning," she muttered, pouring herself coffee like it was just another day. My jaw clenched. I slid my phone across the table. Her phone buzzed just as she reached for her cup. She glanced at it, sighed, then lazily looked at my screen. The color drained from her face. Her eyes flicked up to mine, calculating, assessing. Not guilty, not ashamed, just annoyed. "You were spying on me," she said flatly. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Spying? Is that what we're calling it?" My voice was steadier than I felt. "I was just seeing for myself what you've already decided behind my back." She set her cup down with an exaggerated sigh, rolling her eyes. "You're being dramatic." The sheer audacity of her response nearly made me lose it. "I caught you with another man, Sam." My voice was eerily calm. "You were all over him. And you're sitting here acting like I'm the problem." She crossed her arms, an almost bored expression taking over her features. "You don't own me, Nathan." I froze. The way she said it, like I was some possessive, overbearing husband, as if I was the one crossing a line. "I never said I did." I replied, my voice quieter now, deadlier. "But I thought we had respect. I thought we had something real." She exhaled through her nose, shaking her head as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. "You're overreacting," she muttered, brushing past me to grab her purse. I couldn't believe it. She wasn't even denying it. She wasn't apologizing. She was just done with the conversation. I followed her to the door, feeling my hands tremble with suppressed rage. "What do you expect me to do, Sam?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She turned, arching a perfectly shaped brow. "I don't know. Be a man about it," she said, her lips curling in a cruel smirk. Then she walked out, like it was nothing, like I was nothing. I stood there for what felt like hours, staring at the empty space where she had just been. And that's when it hit me. She expected me to chase her. She expected me to be furious, to fight for her, to prove that I was desperate to keep her. She expected the grand confrontation, the arguments, the passion. She wanted me to break down, to beg her to choose me over him. She wanted to feel wanted. Because in her mind, as long as I was fighting, she was winning. But what happens when the game stops? What happens when there's no fight left? What happens when the man she thought would never leave just disappears? I took a slow, deep breath, and I made my decision. She wanted me to chase her. Instead, I was going to let her feel my absence. And that That would be the beginning of her regret. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. That's what she expected, what she wanted. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this entire affair wasn't about love or passion. It was about power, about keeping me in a game where she controlled the rules. So, I didn't play. That morning, after she left, I took my time. I finished my coffee, staring at the empty seat across from me, feeling the weight of everything sink in. The betrayal, the humiliation, the sheer disrespect she had shown me. Then, I got up, grabbed my laptop, and started making plans. The first thing I did was secure my finances. We had a joint account, well, mostly joint. My salary had been feeding it for years. She had her paycheck, of course, but we both knew who carried the financial weight in our marriage. Not anymore. I transferred my money into my personal account and left just enough for her not to notice immediately. I didn't want to set off alarms, not yet. Then, I logged into all the bills, rent, utilities, credit cards. I removed myself from anything tied to her. If she wanted independence, she was about to get it in the most brutal way possible. Next, I sorted out the lease. The apartment was in both our names, but I was the one who had always paid the rent. That was about to change. I called the landlord and filed my notice to move out. "You're breaking the lease early?" the woman asked, surprised. "Yes," I said simply. "Just let me know the penalties. I'll cover my half." I wasn't going to leave her with legal trouble, that wasn't the point. But I was going to make sure she felt my absence. After that, I went through the apartment, quietly and efficiently packing the things that mattered. My clothes, my personal documents, the few sentimental things I actually cared about. The rest? She could have it. By the time I was done, it was late evening. She still hadn't called. Still hadn't texted. She still thought I was going to react. She had no idea that, as of tonight, she had already lost me. The next morning, I woke up early, feeling lighter than I had in months. I moved through my routine with a strange sense of calm, brushing my teeth, getting dressed, making my own breakfast. But this time, I wasn't making an extra cup of coffee. I wasn't leaving a note. I wasn't waiting for her to come back. I had already booked a temporary place, a furnished apartment across town. It was nothing fancy, just a clean, quiet space where I could breathe. I was gone before she even woke up. And I turned off my phone. I wanted to see how long it would take before she noticed. By noon, I turned my phone back on. 6 missed calls. A handful of texts. At first, the messages were casual, like she was just checking in, asking where I was, wondering if I had left early for work. The last one even had a pet name attached, like nothing had happened. I let them sit there, unread. I didn't respond. Not yet. I wasn't going to give her the panic she wanted. I wanted her to stew in it. That evening, I finally turned my phone on again. One new voicemail. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity won out. The first few seconds were just background noise. Then, her voice, annoyed and impatient. "Nathan, seriously? Are you going to ignore me all day?" A sharp exhale. "Look, I don't know what kind of tantrum you're throwing, but you need to stop acting weird. Call me back." I laughed. A tantrum. That's how she saw it. Not as a consequence of her actions. Not as me reclaiming my dignity. Just a childish outburst. She still thought I was playing the game. She still thought I'd come running back. She still thought she mattered. I deleted the voicemail. The next morning, no new calls. By noon, a few more messages came in. She was getting impatient. By the second day, her confusion started showing through. Her messages got shorter, the casual tone replaced by something sharper. By the third day, frustration crept in. She was no longer asking where I was, she was demanding answers. Asking if I had moved out. Accusing me of being dramatic. On the fourth day, the first cracks appeared. Her messages weren't just frustrated. They were uncertain. She told me to stop ignoring her. Said this was ridiculous. Then, in the same breath, asked why I was doing this. She still didn't get it. She still thought this was temporary. On the fifth day, desperation set in. Her messages came in rapid succession. She needed to talk. She needed to understand. She didn't know what was happening. And there it was. Regret. She had spent days thinking I would come crawling back, trying to prove myself, fighting for a place in her life. Now, she was realizing I was really gone. That's when the calls started again. I didn't answer. I let her feel it. I let her understand what it meant to lose me. She had spent so long believing that I would always be there. Now, she was realizing what it meant when I wasn't. And that was only the beginning of her downfall. At first, she enjoyed it. The space. The freedom. The thrill of doing whatever she wanted without worrying about me waiting at home. For the first few days after I left, I imagined her laughing at my silence, rolling her eyes at my refusal to engage. She probably told herself I'd be back, that I was just sulking, playing hard to get, trying to punish her. She had convinced herself that I needed her more than she needed me, that I would crack first, that I would come crawling back. But as the days stretched into a week, then two, reality started creeping in. And that's when she finally understood something she had never considered before. I wasn't coming back. She didn't notice it immediately. At first, the only thing that changed was the silence. No texts from me. No calls. No arguments. No presence at all. Then, the little inconveniences started piling up. The fridge was emptier than usual. I had always been the one to do the groceries, to restock the essentials. Now, when she reached for something, she found only empty shelves. The laundry sat untouched. I had never done all of it, but I had always done mine, and when I did, I usually took care of some of hers too. Without me, the pile grew. The bills. That's what hit first. She had never really paid attention to them. She had her own money, sure, but I was the one who handled everything on time, without question. When the first overdue notice arrived, she barely reacted. A mistake, she probably thought. Then, a second notice. And a third. It wasn't until the internet got cut off that she finally panicked. By then, 2 weeks had passed. The messages she had been sending had changed. The tone had shifted. At first, she had been dismissive, asking where I was, telling me to stop being dramatic. Now, she was asking when I'd be back. Not if. When. She wasn't used to me being absent. She had spent so much time convincing herself that I would always be there, that no matter what she did, I would keep showing up. She thought I was an anchor she could rely on. Something solid. Permanent. She had never once considered what would happen if I simply let go. It didn't take long for the cracks to spread further. The relationship she had thrown away, our marriage for the new man she thought was so exciting, so different, was already wearing thin. I had seen it before, even before I caught her. She thought he was a spark, a thrill, a taste of something different. But the problem with chasing excitement is that it never lasts. She was used to stability, used to the comfort I had provided without her even realizing it. And now, she was trying to replace that comfort with someone who had never promised to give it to her in the first place. He started pulling away, canceling plans, replying later and later. She probably didn't understand why at first. She had expected him to be everything I wasn't, because that's how it always works in her mind. The grass is greener, right? But now, she was alone more than she had expected to be. And the weight of that realization was starting to sink in. A month passed before I finally heard her voice again. Not through a call, not through a text. She showed up. I had been expecting it. I hadn't moved far, just enough to disappear from her daily life, but not so far that she couldn't find me when she got desperate enough. And she had. There was a knock at my door one evening. Soft at first, then a little firmer. I let it sit. Let her stand out there, waiting, stewing in her own nerves. Then, finally, I opened it. There she was. Her hair wasn't as perfectly styled as usual. There was a tension in her face I had never seen before, a stiffness in her shoulders. For the first time in our entire relationship, she looked unsure. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out right away. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Waited. She cleared her throat. Can we talk? I didn't respond right away. Just studied her. I could see it now, the regret behind her eyes. The realization that the life she had stepped into wasn't nearly as exciting as she had expected it to be. That I wasn't there to fix things. That the man she had betrayed me for had never been a replacement, just a distraction. That she had gambled everything away for nothing. Talk about what? I finally said. Her lips parted, then pressed together again. For a moment, I thought she would break, spill out some long-winded apology, tell me she made a mistake. But she didn't. Because she wasn't ready to admit it yet. Not fully. Instead, she sighed. You really just left? I shrugged. I thought that's what you wanted. She looked away, exhaling sharply. I didn't think you'd actually. She cut herself off, shaking her head. Never mind. I waited. But she didn't finish the thought. She had nothing to say. Nothing she could say. Because she had already lost. She just hadn't fully processed it yet. She thought if she showed up, I would crack. That I would see her, hear her voice, and something inside me would need to fix things. She still thought she had that power over me. She didn't. And she knew it now. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make her uncomfortable. Then, finally, I spoke. You should go. Her head snapped up. What? I think we're done here. Her lips parted slightly, a flicker of shock crossing her face. She had come here expecting control, expecting something. And instead, she was getting nothing. Just the same emptiness she had left me with. For the first time in weeks, I saw something in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. Not arrogance. Not defiance. Regret. Real. Crushing. Regret. And it was too late. I stepped back and closed the door. And for the first time, I felt free. She didn't leave right away. I stood on the other side of the door, listening. Waiting. At first, nothing. Then, a faint shuffle. A slow exhale. A hesitation. I imagined her standing there, staring at the closed door, trying to piece together how things had slipped out of her hands. For the first time, she wasn't the one walking away. She had lost control, and that realization probably felt like poison in her veins. Finally, after what felt like forever, I heard her footsteps fade down the hall. The soft click of her heels against the floor. The reluctant sound of her leaving. And just like that, she was gone again. But this time, it was different. This time, I was the one who had left her behind. I expected her to stay quiet after that. Maybe it was foolish of me to think that one failed attempt would be enough to stop her. Because a week later, she tried again. The texts started slow. Short messages that didn't demand anything. Hopeful maybe. Careful. Hey. I ignored it. A few hours later. How have you been? I let it sit unread. 2 days later, she finally tried something real. I know I messed up. Can we just talk? Please. That last word, please, was what stood out the most. Not because I believed it was genuine, but because I knew she had never expected to say it to me. I could picture it. Her sitting on her bed, staring at her phone, debating whether she should even send it. Wrestling with the unfamiliar feeling of being the one on the other side of the silence. She had spent so long expecting me to fight for her, to chase her. Now, she was the one waiting, and I wasn't answering. A few more days passed before she finally escalated. A call. I stared at my phone, watching her name appear on the screen. I didn't move to pick it up. It rang and rang and rang. Then, silence. A minute later, a voicemail notification popped up. I waited a few hours before listening to it. Her voice was different this time. Not angry. Not cold. Just lost. Nathan, I don't even know what to say. A long pause. I miss you, okay? I miss us. I didn't realize how much until now. Another hesitation. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I don't know. I just wanted to talk. She sighed, and for a second, I almost thought she was going to start crying. But she didn't. Instead, she ended it with a whisper. Call me back. The message ended. I sat there, phone in hand, expression unreadable. For a brief second, I actually felt something. Not hope, not sadness, just the faintest, fleeting echo of what could have been. But it was gone before I could even grasp it. Because I knew better. This wasn't about love. This wasn't about realizing she had made a mistake. This was about regret. About fear. About knowing she had lost something she thought she could replace, only to find that she couldn't. She wanted me to come back. Not because she had changed, but because she missed what I had given her. And I wasn't that man anymore. She didn't stop trying. A few days later, I ran into a mutual friend, someone who had been close to both of us before everything fell apart. I knew right away that they had seen her recently. They gave me a strange look, hesitated, then finally said, "She's not doing great." I shrugged. "That's not my problem." "I know," they said quickly. I think she regrets it. All of it." I let out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. Regret doesn't mean anything if you only feel it when it's too late. They didn't argue. They knew I was right. And I think, deep down, she knew it too. Another call. Another voicemail. This one was more desperate. "I just don't understand, Nathan." Her voice was shaky, edged with frustration. "How can you just walk away like this? After everything." I could hear the emotion bubbling beneath her words. The anger. The disbelief. Because she still didn't understand. She still thought I owed her something. A chance. An explanation. Closure. But she had made the choice to walk away from me long before I ever returned the favor. She had gambled everything, fully expecting that I would be waiting for her to come back. Now, she was standing in the wreckage of her decisions, looking around, realizing there was no way to fix what she had broken. And she hated it. She hated that I wasn't playing my part, that I wasn't letting her rewrite the ending, that I wasn't giving her the chance to win me back. So, I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I had already said everything the night I walked away, and she had ignored it. Now, she would have to live with the silence. Because that silence? That was my answer. The silence drove her mad. I could feel it in the way her messages became more erratic, more emotional, more raw. She had started with arrogance, then confusion, then anger. Now, she was unraveling. I ignored every call, every text. Each one was another desperate attempt to claw her way back into my life, to pull me into an argument, to force a reaction. She didn't want an apology. She wanted control. But I had taken that away from her. And without it, she was falling apart. 2 months. That's how long it took for her to truly break. At first, she tried to play it cool. She went out with friends, plastered on a smile, posted pictures like nothing had changed. Like she had won. Like she had moved on. But people talk. And I started hearing things. She wasn't doing as well as she wanted everyone to believe. Her finances were a mess. She had underestimated how much I had carried us financially, how much of our life had depended on my stability. She wasn't going out as much. She wasn't keeping up appearances. And worst of all, the man she had thrown everything away for had already disappeared. He had never wanted more than a thrill. And now that the excitement was gone, so was he. She had gambled everything for him. And she had lost. Then came the night I knew she had hit rock bottom. I had just gotten home from work, settling into the new life I had built. A life where I wasn't constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. A life where I could breathe again. Then, a knock at the door. I already knew who it was before I even stood up. For a second, I debated not answering, letting her stand there, waiting, just like before. But some part of me wanted to see her face one last time. So, I opened the door. And there she was. She looked nothing like the woman who had once stood in front of me, so full of arrogance, so sure of herself. Her makeup was uneven, like she had done it in a rush. Her clothes were nice, but not put together the way she usually liked. Her hair was slightly messy, as if she had been running her hands through it too much. But it was her eyes that told me everything. They weren't hard anymore. They weren't full of pride. They were empty. She had spent so much time pretending she was fine, convincing herself she had made the right decision. Now, she knew the truth. She had destroyed something she could never get back. She swallowed hard, shifting on her feet. "Can I come in?" "No." The word left my mouth before I could even think about it. She blinked, as if she hadn't expected that. Like she still thought she could walk back into my life with just a conversation. She forced a small smile. "Come on, Nathan. Just for a minute." I shook my head. There's nothing left to say. Her smile faltered. Her mask cracked. "I miss you," she whispered. "I miss us." There it was. The confession she had been holding back. The regret that had been eating her alive. If she had said those words months ago, maybe they would have mattered. Maybe I would have let them in. But now? Now, they were just empty words. I leaned against the doorframe, studying her, letting the silence stretch between us. She was waiting for me to give in, to let her back in, to give her the satisfaction of knowing she still mattered. Instead, I sighed. "I don't think you miss me." Her brows furrowed. "What?" I shook my head. "I think you miss what I gave you. The security, the stability, the certainty that no matter what you did, I would always be there." Her mouth opened slightly, like she wanted to argue. But she didn't. Because she knew I was right. She had never missed me. She had missed the comfort of having me. And now that it was gone, she was lost. She let out a shaky breath. "Can't we at least?" "No." I didn't let her finish. Because there was at least, no second chance. No fixing what she had broken. Her eyes shimmered, just for a second. Then, finally, she nodded. She took a step back, swallowing hard, gripping the strap of her purse like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Then, she turned and walked away. And this time, I didn't watch her go. I just closed the door. And I didn't look back.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.